I've been doing my best to create authentic power since I read The Seed of the Soul, which was in 1989. I had no idea how to do that then, but I just did my best to do what I could because I saw that the life I was living was not the life I wanted to live. And I hadn't met Gary then. I didn't meet him for another 3 or 4 years. I was doing what I could on my own to try to create authentic power, which a lot of you maybe have been trying to do after you read the book. So when I met Gary, I knew I was being actually connected with him by the universe. It wasn't a sexual attraction. It wasn't anything like I'd experienced before. I just knew I was being connected, and I didn't know why. In fact, I thought my frightened parts felt so inferior to Gary because he had written two of the most important books for me, The Dancing Woolly Masters, which started my journey of being excited that, wow, quantum physicists have some thoughts about we're all connected, and I knew we were, but no one had ever said that to me. That was in 79. And then when I read The Seed of the Soul, I couldn't believe what I was reading because I knew it. No one told me. I never even thought about those things until I read it. When I met him, because the books were so important to me, no, not because the books were so important to me, because I had frightened parts that felt inferior, I didn't think I could even talk to Gary. I thought he knew so much more than I did, we couldn't even speak. That's what I felt. I knew that if I were to decide to stay connected with Gary in whatever way the universe wanted, that I needed to challenge. That's what I knew I needed to challenge, that frightened part of my personality that felt so inferior to him. And it felt inferior to many people in my life, but it was completely the way I felt with Gary. I really explored that frightened part of my personality. It's still there in me. I know it is. But and not just with Gary, I've challenged it over and over again so that I could actually be an equal to Gary. Because without that, we couldn't be in spiritual partnership. That's a partnership between equals for the purpose of spiritual growth. So if I'm feeling inferior or superior to him, I am not being a spiritual partner. And I'm not allowing him to be a spiritual partner to me. It's true for everyone. If you want to be in spiritual partnership, you need to be willing to challenge every frightened part and every frightened part either feels inferior or superior. All the ones that you are experiencing now, they either feel one way or the other. They're not equal. For sure, they don't feel equal. I did that and challenged that and kept challenging it to put on an event for Gary. And I'd never done anything like that before. I couldn't imagine. I thought, oh, an event's supposed to happen. And I thought, oh, well, I'm having this vision, so I'm going to need to do this. But I didn't have any idea how. So I did. I put on an event, and with much resistance. And I could tell you a long story about that. But finally, I really stepped in and decided to do this. Gary, of course, he didn't have a mailing list. He had nothing, but he sent his letters from people who had read The Seed of the Soul to his parents in Kansas. So one time he showed me all these letters, and there was a box full of them in their closet, and he showed them to me. And then when I thought, oh, I'm going to have his sister send that box back to me. And that's how I made the mailing list to send to people, because I didn't know who knew about The Seed of a Soul. Gary hadn't been on Oprah. There was nothing like that, there were just people who were very appreciative. I put on this event, and people came from all over the world. It was a fairly small group, maybe 40, or I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but we were outside most of the time. It was in a retreat center near Mount Shasta, where we lived. And I had been to actually a number of retreats before. And they were all so loving and so beautiful, and lots of music, and everything was really sweet. And it was just such a, sweet thing, to go to these retreats. I really loved them, and I look forward to going back every year. But I knew that's not the kind of retreat we knew. That's not the kind of retreat we could give. We couldn't give a retreat where we pretended like nothing was ever happening and no one had frightened parts and everything was okay. We wanted to teach people about authentic power and spiritual partnership. So that meant that whenever anything came up to be talked about, we needed to talk about it openly as a group. So our retreat actually went quite well, and it was loving and nice, but people kept coming up to us and telling us all the stuff they didn't want to say about other people. And we said, bring it to the group. Bring it to the group. No one wanted to bring it to the group. They said something about our co-presenter, the one that was co-presenting with Gary. And it was, of course, was the very last night of the retreat. And of course, Gary needed to say something about what people had said about him picking up on other women. The women were saying that about this guy, this co-presenter. And we couldn't let that go and just pretend like it didn't happen. And we had...
but we didn't know that it was happening.
We didn't know.
We just knew that people were coming to say this about my co-presenter.
Yeah.
So
we
told
didn't...
them what we'd tell them. So I did what I'd always tell them to do. So take it to the group.
Because they wouldn't. I knew that Gary was going to do this, and I knew he had to do this. And boy, it brought up so many frightened parts of my personality. You can't even imagine. I mean, maybe you can. But I knew what was the right thing to do. I knew. So Gary, we came into session, and right away, Gary said to the co-presenter, my brother, I don't want to have distance from you, and this is the thing that I've heard. And I just want to check it out to see, is that true? Is that going on? And wow, everyone exploded because they only wanted to hear things that were easy for them to hear and loving for them to hear. Their frightened parts became so active. I think there's only one person on the whole group that didn't have a reaction that I remember. I don't remember anyone else. Everyone else was just beside themselves because they weren't used to going to a retreat where people were really talking about what was really going on and wanting to look at it from a different way and create authentic power. They had never been to anything like that. Of course, we had never created anything like that either. Because we weren't teaching yet about authentic power. This was the first time. So Gary took off with his co-presenter to talk about, what was going on. And I was left with everyone who had unbelievable reactions. But I knew they had to go and talk. So I just followed my intuition. And I said, okay, everyone, I'm going to sit here and meditate. If you want to join me, join me. So I just sat and meditated and just was quiet and just there holding the space for everyone, just holding the space for the possibility that people could learn about themselves from what was happening. And I sat there for a long time. I don't even know how long. I don't really remember, but when I opened my eyes, almost everyone was in a circle around me that was at the retreat. I think there was only one that wasn't. So I just said, just told them what I learned, what I was learning about myself. And I asked them what they were learning, what they had learned from all of this.
About themselves.
About themselves. And it was just so beautiful and amazing what they had learned about themselves. And for some reason, that retreat has been really close to me this since we've been here. It's been coming up for me, and I didn't know why. And I don't know why what you said brought this up again, Kaya, but it came up earlier in one of our pre-meetings too. And I just feel that energy, how at this moment, I'm not even sure what I want to say about that, but except that I know that my commitment to creating authentic power is the most important thing to me. That is what I know. And I know that my commitment to supporting anyone who's interested in learning about authentic power and being in spiritual partnership is the next most important thing to me, meaning that I have to have my own commitment first. Our retreats aren't places where it's not that they're not joyful. It's just that to get to the joy, you have to be able to experience the frightened parts that keep you from, yes, you could be happy. We could make you really happy and excited, but to actually feel joy, the only way I've been able to feel it is to be able to let myself feel the depth of the pain that keeps me from feeling joy. And to keep challenging those frightened parts that keep me from feeling truly alive. Because I don't feel alive when it's frightened parts controlling me. That's not alive. That's sleepwalking. And I'd been sleepwalking all of my life until I read The Seed of the Soul. And I knew there was another possibility. And I'd done a lot of things, and I've been meditating. I've been, thinking I was growing spiritually, but I wasn't at all. Because really, most of my life was about frightened parts controlling me, pleasing people, finding the right man. I mean, I could go on and on. Jealousy. I mean, inferiority, superiority, judging. I mean, I was, all the list. But I felt a lot of intensity yesterday with all that, because Gary and I hold the space for this event. And I'm willing to hold whatever space I need to and be as uncomfortable as I have to be just to support the possibility of what I know is coming into being. Because we're not going to evolve as a human species unless we're creating authentic power. Not pretending to act with love, but actually acting from love and not fear. And I know that's true. And so I'm going to do everything while I'm still in the Earth School to have that happen. That's what I'm born to do. And I'm really grateful to know that.